have a few notes just in case I go off the lines. I hope you all hear me. Yes. First of all, I want to give you a very warm welcome here today to the first anniversary of the date on which the library was founded. It's hard to believe that a year has passed into eternity, but God has been doing good things for us, and we thank God for the way He has been leading and guiding. As you know, this library was born out of the generous heart of the man whose name it bears. Throughout his lifetime, he gave hundreds of books as gifts to young preachers, especially students, and on the flyleaf of such books, he would write some pithy comment. He was often asked by booksellers if he had a certain collection and if he would sell it to them, but he never did. He could have made a small fortune out of books, but that was never in his mind. Money was never a big thing. As far as he was concerned, it was big. He could have gone around the earth and did do to raise money for other people and other works. And in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I heard a man telling that he came here for the first time back in 1963. He was beginning to start Operation Mobilisation, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. And he said my husband met him at the ferry, brought him up home, and he stayed with us for a few nights. And Ian said to him, I'll raise you some money for your work to help you to start. And he said he raised enough money to buy his first 2 trucks for the work of Operation Mobilisation, and that was back in 1963, and that work is still going on. So that's just something, just one little item out of all the things that he raised money for. His pleasure was in giving and helping and encouraging others. I was with him in one bookstore, I think I'll tell you this story, when he was asked if he had a certain set of books, and he said yes he had. And the bookseller said to him, well, you know, he said, if you would let me have them, I could get you £2,500 for them. And I think we nearly both fainted when we heard that price, because as a young minister, and when Ian started ministry, he was just 20 in 1946, and his salary was a princely sum of £2.50 a week. So he paid £10 for the set of books, which was a month's salary, and those books, of course, were very precious to him. But to be offered £2,500 for them at that time would have been a big temptation for many person. But I joked him when we came out and talked about the price of books, and I said, well, Ian, if ever I'm short of money, I know where those books are. I know where to get the money. But because they were so hard earned, a dear friend of his also, when he saw the books, he said, Ian, I'll get those covered for you. And he had them covered in blue leather and tooled in gold. And there they sit. They're still in our library at home. And I often look at them and think of what they meant to him and of the things that happened and how he was able to use them. After we, as I told you about that, this little incident will give you an idea of his love of books and how much he appreciated their value. The joy of holding a book in your hand and reading it and enjoying it cannot be compared to downloading a book onto a Kindle reader. The only benefit is when travelling. A Kindle's much easier to carry with any number of books on it than to pack your case full of books. And that was one of the things in our travels, even here to London, or no matter where. Ian's briefcase was always packed with books. One night coming home from London, we had a few hours off one day and went to a bookseller's, one of his favourite booksellers in London. And he had bought some more and crammed them into the bag. And just before the plane came down, began its descent, he was putting this book into his briefcase, and Lord Ames was sitting beside him, and he said, Ian, that case is trying to tell you something. And he says, I know it is, but I'm not listening. He had an awful job to squeeze that book in, but he got it in. But during the past year, we've been thinking of ways and means that this library can be used to help others. And I'm going to hand over to my daughter, Rhonda, who will explain what is taking place today and what this gathering we want to tell you about. It gives me pleasure, and I'm sure it will give you pleasure, to hear what Rhonda has to say. So I'm going to call upon her now. Thank you again for coming, and I hope you find this morning an interesting one and a helpful one. Thank you.
I depend on notes whenever I'm speaking. Daddy used to always have very good notes, but he was the sort of man that was always free from his notes once he got going, but I'm bound by mine. When I speak about the library, I always like to say that libraries are about books and books are about stories. As youngsters, if we were causing mischief, not that we really did very much, but if we were causing mischief or had nothing to do, Daddy would always say, go and get yourself a good book and read it. And it wasn't always the advice we wanted. But if he did see you with a book, he always said, what's that you're reading? And if he approved of it, you got a pat on the head. And if you didn't, he would say, dear, help us. But of course, our choices of reading material were not always the same as Dad's. And when Dad would press me in the direction as a child of Pilgrim's Progress, I'm afraid my hands reached for Enid Blyton. And whenever he thought I should have progressed to someone like John Winthrop, I'm afraid I had only reached the lofty heights of John Gresham. So our choices were not always the same, but we all were readers in our family. And for me, libraries will always be about stories, and they'll always be about the place where dreams overreach the mundane. And they'll not always be about weighty matters, although that does have its place. But with that in mind, I would like to tell you a story about an elm tree. And it's a true story, and the elm tree was ours. Right in the middle of our front garden stood a beautiful elm tree. And it was there before we moved into the house, and it was already a mature elm tree. And we're in the house over 40 years now. And without us realising it, that elm tree had certainly grown. And it had grown until it was more than 70 feet high. And its breadth was so much that various birds and squirrels could nest in it without impinging on one another's territory. And we loved it, and it made us look up. In fact, it made everyone who came to our house look up. Even the odd Philistine who would arrive and say, oh, that tree's awful big, and it would cause a terrible disaster if it was to come down, but even they had to look up. Its bare winter arms welcomed us in the winter, and its branches caused a network around our house that was like a safety net. In the spring, its luminous young green leaves dared us to smile our way into the future. And in full summer glory, it turned our garden into a glitter ball of twinkling light. In the autumn, its dappled golden light and falling amber leaves took us gently into the early frosts. But 2 years ago, our elm tree took poorly. In the winter, we noticed it was shedding more than the usual number of small limbs that would come away in the natural cycle of things, and in the brittle winds of winter, it lost more. When spring came, those luminous leaves were few and far between, but to our pleasure, the birds did still nest in it last spring. And we saw a lot more of how they made their nest because of the lighter coverage in the tree. When summer came, the glitter ball wasn't just as dramatic, and we told ourselves the tree is just having a rest. It's old, it's taking a little holiday, and it will soon come back into its own. The autumn came, and there were considerably less nuggets of gold to sweep up. And throughout last winter, its arms looked frail and its embrace became more tender. Spring, I suppose, was when our fears were realised. Just one small patch of those luminous green leaves met our hopeful eyes, and not one nest was built. Although the birds did still roost in it and the squirrels did still play in it, but they dared not entrust their young to its frail arms. And our great elm tree stood for the first time without giving succour to a new generation of creatures. We called our tree man. He came and the news was not good, and he was as sad as we were. He returned with his friend and they both left with their shoulders slumped. They came back with more friends, and I didn't want to hear what they were telling me when we stood at the foot of our beautiful elm tree. I didn't want to see what they were showing me, the damp that trickled down its length like heavy mercury, the woody smell of too much fungus, and the soft sponginess apparent at the roots. Its days were numbered, it would be felled. And so, just a few weeks ago, at the close of August, on a bright and beautiful late summer day, the tree men came. Their diesel engines and petrol saws broke into the sweet scent of our garden, and the loud hum was relentless. It took the whole day. First the limbs, the outstretched arms of beauty were dropped one by one. By mid-afternoon there remained only the trunk, a defiant shard still pointing upward, and even more so now, like a finger making sure we would keep looking up. And then it too was felled. The crackling, breaking of timber announced the final thud, and we all shuddered, even the house. The next 2 days were spent clearing and cutting, and logs were gleaned, and our bruised garden was repaired, and new seed was sown. I confess we were all depressed. I stopped turning the car at the front of the house because I didn't like what I now saw. No matter where we looked at the garden from, at every angle it was bereft. The birds were in shock, the squirrels were at a loss, and when our regular friends came calling, they each remarked how sad it made them. Of course, you all know what I'm really saying here. The things of nature and life are bonded in our very souls, and often what we see in nature parallels our own experiences and tightens hard the ropes of hurt and pain. The Creator's hand made us to coexist. It agitated me, the link that was in my mind between Dad's passing and our elm tree taking poorly. For me anyway, it was the wrong conclusion for the story of our lovely elm tree. Felled, a great gaping hole in our garden, no happy ending, no saving grace, the tree was gone. That is, until just last Saturday. When Denzi Boy and I, and Denzi Boy is my dog by the way, when Denzi Boy and I were walking up the path, where my eyes had always met the elm tree, I was faced with one glorious sunset. Stripes of blue and rose, all dusted with Naples yellow, and a sinking orb of golden liquid. This was an uninterrupted view that I had not seen before, and it stopped me short, for I was seeing what the elm tree had always intended I would see, and why it had trained me to look up. In humankind, as well as in nature, God has peppered our history with great elms to keep us all looking up. Dad was one of those great elms, and he still is. He was always interested in people and what was going on in the world. And because he was interested, he was active. That is why his Christian service lasted for 65 years. And we would say his Christian service continued even after he had retired formally from his pulpit. And his public service stretched more than 45 years because he saw the needs of others and helped in a practical manner and encouraged us to lift our eyes and to really see and then to help. We cannot lose that spirit from amongst us. The Lord Bannside Foundation seeks to help those who emulate Dad's life of service, both in the Christian realm and in society. It will enable us to use this library as a company to glean all we can for charity and to promote the work of the foundation because that is the real bedrock of what this library is about. Today you are here, you may not have known it, but you are here to help us plant a new tree. And we want you to come alongside us and help us plant this new elm tree. We want you to add in a handful of soil and ensure that this sapling gets good roots, that it will be a long fellow and grow tall, and that its width will be broad enough to embrace the needy. We appreciate your interest. Those of you who are here, some of you have been interested throughout the whole year on what we're doing, on our shepherding schemes, in our Longfellow schemes, and that has touched our hearts. And we are delighted that some of you who have already been able to be helped in a practical way, who are in different ministries, and that we've been able to help in the past year. We're thrilled that some of you can be here. But we want to do more, and we want to reach out to others. Daddy didn't believe in ever stopping, and we're going to try and not stop in what we're doing with this work. We have a little card today that we're going to give you each as a little memory of what we did, of what we launched today. And there are some words on it written by Dad that we recently came across. But what we are asking you to do is to put that somewhere that you will see it regularly. And whenever you see it, please ask for God's blessing on the Lord Bannside Foundation and on this elm tree. And that will ensure that our sapling is watered. But of course, trees also need fed, and we're going to help you feed it as well if you're so interested. And we have some items on sale today. Our first foundation pen, we've created a nice Lord Bannside Foundation pen, and we have it available today. And again, it's another way that you can, when you're using that pen, think of it or pass it on to someone else. Normally they'll retail at about £12. Today we have them for 10. We also have many of our books and special offers, and bags of books and special offers. So please come, and if there's anything that interests you, take it with you. But while we're interested, of course, in getting funding in, the purpose of today is not so much to do that, but to put this seed into your hearts along with us. And the little card means more to us than some of your purchases will today, because this will be ongoing. And so please use this little card to remind you of our work and what we're doing. The other thing I would like to draw your attention to is, scattered around the room, we have put our little sheet of our diary of events for this year. It takes us right through to spring. Take one of these with you, and if you're interested in attending any of these events, again, it's a reminder for you to get in touch with us and tell you that you're coming along, and we will keep you posted in what we're doing as well. The first of these events is actually on the 5th of November, and it's a visit to the Song Museum. There's only 30 places available for that, and we have a sign-up sheet for that today. Dad was very interested in the work of the Song Museum, and so we're keeping that link up. So please have a look at that next event. It may be of interest to you. And then we'll be back here at the library afterwards for a guest lecture by the director of the museum on women in the First World War, and our friend Dr. Ian Adamson will also be chairing that afternoon session because he worked alongside Dad in that. Now, I've sort of digressed to mention those few things to you. I emphasise our thanks to you for your interest and our appreciation for your prayers for this residual part of Dad's ministry as we view it and his legacy. And with that in mind, I would ask our friend David to come and water the sapling for us, and then also to give thanks. And we would encourage you to stay and have a cup of tea and coffee and take your time and enjoy some fellowship together. So thank you very much again.
Could I just say on behalf of all of us a very special thanks to Baroness Paisley and her family. We do account it a very special privilege just to be part of this wonderful occasion, sowing the seed for the Lord Bannside Foundation. I think what we've heard from Rhonda today has been inspirational, it has been encouraging, it's also been very challenging, and I know as we take this little card it will be a special reminder of the privilege that we have of being part of this legacy. I often think of the Christian life as a relay race. One runs the length of the course with the baton, they hand it on to someone else and they run the course and hand it on. The baton doesn't change. The runner may change, the course may change in some degree, but the baton is the same. And Dr. Paisley, under God's grace, has given to us a tremendous baton that we might run with that. And I trust we might run faithfully to the day that the Lord calls us home. Thank you so much, Mrs. Paisley, and your family for all that you mean to all of us here, and the encouragement and the help that you've been. Let's unite our hearts together, please, as we pray. Loving Father, we draw nigh to Thee in the Saviour's precious name, acknowledging that Thou art God and beside Thee there is none other. We do rejoice that while we do not see Thee as we see each other, we have this confidence of talking to Thee as the friend who loveth at all times. Thou doth assure us as we draw nigh to Thee, Thou Thyself will draw nigh to us. And Thou knowest the purpose of our gathering. We thank Thee for the challenge that we have already received, and we pray that as this seed is planted, that it may germinate and bring forth much precious fruit. We thank Thee for Baroness Paisley. We thank Thee for Sharon and Rhonda, for Cherith and Ian and Kyle. We praise Thee for this dear family, and pray that Thou be pleased to surround them with Thy grace and with Thy tender mercy. We pray for the work of the foundation, that it may reach out to the lives of many people, not just simply here in Northern Ireland, but right throughout the world, that many may know that the message of the gospel is that which saves to the uttermost all that come unto God by Thee. Loving Father, we thank Thee for Thy presence, and we commend this ministry to Thy tender keeping. Accept our thanks for the good things that have been provided, the kind hands that have prepared them. Help us to eat and to drink to Thy glory, for the Saviour's sake. Amen.
Could I apologise for the absence of both my sons here today? They both asked me to apologise for them. Kyle has a special weekend of meetings with Dr. John Douglas, and Ian has been on parliamentary business in the Philippines this week and is just on his way home today. He doesn't arrive until tomorrow, but that's the reason why neither of them are with us today. I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you.